Next candidate in the general election in September is here, David Ashford for Douglas North. You kind of waited a long time before announcing this. I know you had one or two other things on maybe, but were you at all ever really seriously not considering standing, or what were you doing?
I hadn't had time to think about it, to be honest, Paul. Before I do anything, I like to have time to consider and decide what I wanted to do. And obviously this year's been a bit busy with several other things, particularly in the department that I'm Minister of. So initially I said I was going to make my decision in January. Then I said I'd make it around Easter. And as it turns out, the year got away with me, and I only managed to declare a few weeks ago after careful consideration.
Oh, well, that's one. I mean, so you were thinking yes or no, were you? I mean, has this been too much, or you just wanted to have a change of direction, or what was going on?
Well, to be honest, I hadn't had time to think about it.
Just that.
So I always think if you're going to do a job, you should always be fully committed to doing it and make sure that is what you want to do. So whenever I've stood for re-election, be it Douglas Town Council, when I stood for re-election several times, I've always taken a period of reflection to decide, is this what I still want to do? Is this what I want to go forward? And do I believe I've still got something to offer? Okay. And I think all candidates should do that. And that's what I did. But the period of reflection was slightly later in the year than initially I'd hoped for.
All right. Let's try and deal with some local issues, because obviously it's so much with you we could just talk about in national stuff. But do you have time for your constituents with all this whirlwind that's been going around you? It's
been a balancing act, particularly over the last 2 years. The constituency work is the stuff that I really, really enjoy, because it's where you can make a big difference to someone's individual life, and seeing the look on people's faces when you manage to resolve a problem is absolutely great. You can't resolve every problem. You have to be honest with people as a constituent MHK. There's sometimes cases where people will be disappointed and you can't resolve it, but I always try to do what I can. But it has been an act of balancing. But the constituents that have been in touch with me have been very understanding about that. In fact, very, very understanding in some cases.
And what are the local issues besides? Everyone says housing, so that's everywhere. But are there any particular local issues in your area?
There is local issues. So in relation to road surfacing, so Cronkerberry requires road surfacing doing to it. There's now the development down on Tremode Road as well, where there is concerns around that development in terms of the use of the shared space that's being proposed by DOI. And there's also, of course, local concerns that wrap into national concerns as well around climate change, how that's going to be funded for households, and also of course we've got Williston and Douglas North, and there's social housing considerations there around the refurb that is still going on and the mix of provision that's available for people.
And you find that time to do the local stuff, do you, with everything else going on?
Yeah, I you know me, I'm a bit of a workaholic. I try and get it. Like I say, it has been a balancing act of time, particularly with the brief that I took on as Minister, but it's something I really enjoy as the constituency work, and people are never shy of contacting me with their views, opinions and problems.
Okay, well, national politics, I mean, you've got your particular specialist subject. Suppose you get back, would you see yourself continuing on the route you're in now, or have you got other interests you'd like to pursue?
That wouldn't be up to me anyway. That would first of all be up to the people of Douglas North whether they return me in the first place, and then up to whoever becomes the new Chief Minister if they want me in their ministerial team. I've always been a strong believer that politicians should change roles fairly frequently, because I think it's always good to have a fresh perspective in different departments. If I was offered health again, then I would go down the route of taking health again. But I think, I do think sometimes it's good for politicians to move around and get fresh perspectives. I've been in health now for nearly 4 years at the point of the election. So whoever becomes Chief Minister might decide it's time for a change.
Yeah, I'm just working through what you say there, because it sounds like, I'm open to anything, but I'm happy where I am, which is fine. But if you had your own choice, where would you want to go? Let's try that.
I honestly don't know, to be honest. I haven't thought about it in that sense. Okay. I'd be content with sticking with health. I mean, any of the departments, to be honest. If someone offered me a ministerial job within their administration, then assuming it wasn't an administration I fundamentally disagreed with, then I would take that offer up.
How's it been affecting you? Because like everyone, we keep saying like Marmite, chalk and cheese. People love you, hate you because you're doing this or you're doing that. Do you think it affected you on the doorstep?
Not the feedback I'm getting so far. I'm already out knocking the doors. I haven't been able to do as much as I would like.
Well, I was going to ask you that as well,
timing-wise. But I have been out doing some of the doors. The reception so far has been very positive. But obviously you never know until election day, and we'll know on election night what the views of the people of Douglas North are.
Because your job goes on regardless of this election, isn't it? Until literally you hand over the keys almost, isn't it?
It is. I remain Minister for Health even post-election until a replacement is appointed, until someone is appointed to the role. So I still remain as Minister for Health and Social Care. So again, got to balance the time constraints. But the door knocking is something I enjoy because it's talking to real people out there on the door and actually getting their views.
This will affect everything though for you. I mean, there's no question about it. You are probably the most talked about person. So does that give you the advantage or not the advantage, I suppose?
Well, I think it's probably a mixed bag. There's probably, you mentioned Marmite there, there's probably some people who love me, there's probably some people who hate me, and that's politics. So again, it's hard to say until you actually get that greatest opinion poll of all, which is the votes being counted on election night.
So what drives you on to do more? I mean, because obviously you've got your gong as well. You could go off into the sunset or do something else. I mean, it's something it makes you tick that you like doing this as a career politician.
Well, it's strange because I still don't view myself as a career politician. We've had this conversation several times. Every year. We've done our updates. But I think over the next 5 years, there's a lot of challenges coming around the corner to our island. I love our island. I think we've got a brilliant community here. And I think with my experience over the last 5 years, I've got a lot to offer in the next administration, be it as a minister or a backbencher. And I think that the challenges are going to be domestic challenges over the next 5 years. And I think we really, really need to get on top of them. There's some very, very big ones.
Go on,
so, for instance, I think we've got affordable housing for young people that's now becoming a bit of an explosive issue. Actually, to be honest, we've got the climate change agenda coming round it. I think the planning system needs fundamental reform as well, in order to be able to encourage growth. And we've got to diversify the economy more to ensure that we are resilient and we can stand any economic shocks that might be coming off the back of the pandemic.
You did mention the health service in there. I mean, you need more funding all the time, don't you? And yet we're a low tax economy.
It's diversifying the economy and actually growing the economic base that will allow us to pay for those services such as health and education. I mean, I could list off about 15 priorities in health, 15 in education, but those are the core domestic ones that I think are going to be building up, and they need to be tackled sooner rather than later in the next administration.
And your administration, you're leaving. Do you think you've all done a fairly good job? And basically about you, I mean, everyone knows what you're doing, but do you think we're in the right direction? And
I think in a lot of cases we are. I think a lot of the course has been hit by the pandemic because that just took over everything. I think in terms of how administrations perform, I always think it's wise to leave that to history, because it's much better to be able to reflect back and actually see how administrations have done rather than trying to make snap judgments while an administration's ongoing. But I think on many issues, history will treat this administration kindly.
Well, I mean, you're a high flyer in this thing. You're not going to be a backbencher. I mean, you just mentioned that there, but I can't see that. Whatever happens, I'm now going to push you on that question which everyone keeps asking, is that you could be potentially the next Chief Minister, regardless of what you say to me right this second, which I'm not interested. The potential is you could be, because other people might vote you in. Right?
Categorically, no. I will not be offering myself as a candidate for Chief Minister.
So you have to put yourself up. You can't.
Yes, you can't. Just to be clear, someone can't stand up on the day without the consent of the candidate and propose someone.
Right.
For Chief
Minister.
Minister.
Absolutely ruling yourself out.
I am absolutely ruling myself out. My family is very young. They're moving into the teenage years. They've already lost a substantial amount of time with me as Minister for Health. I think it would be completely unfair of them to put them through 5 years of me as Chief Minister. And we have some very other good candidates that, depending upon what they offered, if I was a member of the next House of Keys, in terms of what they're offering the Manx public, I might be minded to support.
Interesting. So that's a definite 100%. You
that
are
is
not
definite,
going to be the next Chief Minister.
That is definite, categorical. I will not be a candidate for the next Chief Minister.
But yeah, if you did keep health and social care, that's in itself, well, it may get less, who knows, but it's still a huge undertaking, isn't it? You talk about splitting between your family life.
It is, but as Chief Minister is another step up. People don't always realise that, because I don't think people quite sometimes understand what the role of Chief Minister does, and how much work is involved in that. But I can categorically say for the next 5 years I will not be a candidate.
But you're not ruling out, never say never, ever? right?
Well, let's go one parliament at a time,
Okay.
shall we, Paul?
Who are you wanting to be the Chief Minister?
Well, it would depend on what people are offering to the people of the island.
Who do you want?
I think the two front runners
Yes.
are probably Alf Cannon and Alex
No
Allinson.
surprise there. Who would you like of those two?
Well, I think it would depend on what they offer.
Well, you must know
because
what
I've laid out what I believe the challenges are around those domestic issues. I want to see what the candidates that come forward offer in relation to those, and it's off the back of that I'll make a judgment as to who I believe will best serve the island.
Hustings, you'll listen to that. And
if I'm a member of the House of Keys, who obviously will be the electorate.